Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 18, entitled Parikshit Cursed by a Brahmana Boy, text number 9 and 10. I shall read the text 9 by myself. उपवर्णितं एतद्वः पुण्यं पारीक्षितं मया वासुदेवकथोपेतम् आख्यानं यदपृच्छता. Translation. O sages, as you did ask me, now I have described almost everything regarding the narrations about Lord Krishna in connection with the history of the pious Maharaja Parikshit. Purport. Srimad Bhagavatam is the history of the activities of the Lord, and the activities of the Lord are performed in relation with the devotees of the Lord. Therefore, the history of the devotees is not different from the history of Lord Krishna's activities. A devotee of the Lord regards both the activities of the Lord and those of his pure devotees on an equal level, for they are all transcendental. Text 10. Ya ya katha bhagavataha कतनीयोरु कर्मणः गुणकर्माश्रया पुंभिः संसेव्यास्ताबुभीषिभिः. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Those who are desirous of achieving complete perfection in life must submissively hear all topics that are connected with the transcendental activities and qualities of the personality of Godhead, who acts wonderfully. Purport. The systematic hearing of the transcendental activities, qualities, and names of Lord Sri Krishna pushes one towards eternal life. Systematic hearing means knowing Him gradually in truth and fact. And this knowing Him in truth and fact means attaining eternal life, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Such transcendental glorified activities of Lord Sri Krishna are the prescribed remedy for counteracting the process of birth, death, old age, and disease, which are considered to be material awards for the conditioned living being. The culmination of such a perfectional stage of life is the goal of human life and the attainment of transcendental bliss. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. So in this chapter, we are discussing about how Parikshit was cursed by a Brahmana boy. And we read two purports today. So in the first purport, Prabhupada is mentioning that Srimad Bhagavatam is the history of the devotees of the Lord, in addition to the pastimes of the Lord. So and he also explains further that a true devotee will know that both the activities of the Lord and the activities of his pure devotees are on the same level, because both are same nature, chinmaya, transcendental. So this brings us to a point that how Prabhupada always used to explain, a bona fide spiritual master means he is a transparent via medium. So in fact, if you analyze why this transparent via medium, so why not just via medium? Because it is very essential and crucial for our philosophy, in our philosophy, to understand that how this transparent via medium makes all the whole difference. In fact, recently when I had met one very big man of the city, he was asking, Swamiji, it is so nice that you are all engaged in the spreading of Gita. So in fact, recently when the country witnessed the consecration of Lord Ram, deity at Ayodhya, so the whole country and many parts of the world were also reverberating with the names of Lord Ram. So and he was telling, but in your organization all through, from morning till night, you only are dedicated for chanting the names of Krishna and Ram. So it is so nice, but there is one problem with your organization. So I asked, what is that? So he said, Swamiji, but why are you all fighting in the courts? So what is the reason that, it is because he was telling me that he was trying to talk high of our organization, so ISKCON. And then one of his friends said, no, that is all fine, but they are all in the court. And his friend was one of the lawyers, and so he knew the details of our case, which we are fighting against the Guru issue. So he was asking that all that is fine, but then they are all in courts, and we know all that is it's not okay for a spiritual organization. So this person who was our well-wisher was asking me, why don't we just compromise and let go of the case? So why should we fight for the sake of this property? So then I explained to him that it is not a property tussle. So it is a fight for establishing the position of Srila Prabhupada. And in fact, when you go and meet outside people, and especially in Bangalore, ISKCON Bangalore is quite big, but when you go to other cities, so the camp led by Mumbai team, so where they have so many other people as spiritual masters, so they are already having a good presence. So what happens is when we explain to them that this is not a property tussle, they are first of all surprised that, oh, Swamiji, then what is it for? So then we explain. And in fact, sometimes people also ask, both of your organizations, 99.9999% is same, isn't it? So the attire, the principles that we follow, the chanting of 16 rounds, reading Prabhupada's books, so the morning sadhana program, so our understanding of the philosophy, so the way we dress ourselves, that is the wearing tilak, kanthi, so everything 99.9999% is same. So what is that 0.0001% that is different? We accept Srila Prabhupada, His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada as the spiritual master, but whereas they don't. So now, Swamiji, this is a small thing, no? So why don't we just compromise? So I told him, sir, it is small in terms of quantitative difference, so 0.001%, so that much only is difference. But for an aspiring disciple, for an aspiring devotee, for a sadhaka, this is 99.9999, because what has happened is Prabhupada created this world of ISKCON, and he also said we invite the whole world to come and live in it. And unfortunately, after the physical departure of Prabhupada, today his disciples are trying to move him away out of his own house which he created. Isn't it? So that is how they're not having place for Prabhupada. So that is our fight. So because we want to have Prabhupada in our center of all our activities. And why that is important? Because as it is said in this verse, a guru is a transparent via medium. So the Bhagavatam verse is explaining here the guru's activities, the pure devotees' activities, and Lord Krishna's activities, the Supreme Lord's activities are non-different. So in other words, a guru is the one who is taking you to Krishna. If anyone comes to Krishna, he will direct him to Guru. And if anyone goes to a bona fide Guru, he will direct him to Krishna. So this is a complementing roles. These are the complementing roles played by Guru and Krishna. So in the absence of Prabhupada, when somebody else takes that role, are they able to guide those aspiring disciples to Krishna? So in fact, we have seen so many disgraceful fall downs. So that means, therefore this, and even there is one example also Prabhupada gives, just like there is a post box. So when you go and drop a letter intended to be delivered to some other person in some other place, so when you put that, so the government will make sure that it reaches the destination. But instead of a post box, you go and put that letter in some other place. Will it reach that destination? No. Similarly, when we surrender our faith to a bona fide spiritual master, he will be able to take us to Krishna. But on the other hand, if we believe somebody else and dedicate our lives to him, then it will only turn out to be a futile attempt, and we will be losing the trust on spirituality itself. So there are hundreds and thousands and lakhs of devotees who have believed some form of spirituality, who have believed some person, and when it turned out to be a self-styled godman and not having that adhikara from in the parampara, so then they will lose the whole faith in spirituality itself. So therefore, this fight is important. So when I explained to him, he was then understanding, and then I explained further that how this is not at all a property fight, and how we have even said on the record of the court that if they are ready to accept the proposition of accepting Srila Prabhupada as the Guru, then we are even ready to withdraw this case. So to that extent we have given in writing. So this very clearly proves that our fight is for re-establishing the position of Srila Prabhupada, which is very important for an aspiring disciple. In fact, Rupa Goswami explains in Nectar of Devotion that accepting the shelter of a bona fide pure devotee of the Lord is the first item of devotional service. Adau Guruvashrayaha. So accepting the shelter of a pure devotee is the first element in devotional service. And just like in here also in this purport, Prabhupada says that for when we hear the transcendental activities of the Lord, one will be relieved from Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. And in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is referring in 4.6, he first says that Sambhavami Atma Mayaya, to explain to all of us that when I take birth, it is not like somebody else taking birth. So we all take birth because of our karma, because of our sinful activities. But when Lord takes birth, He does it out of Atma Maya, the self energy, the internal potency. And further in 4.9, Krishna says, Janma karma chame divyam, evam yo vetti tatvataha, tyaktva deham punarjanma, naiti mameti so Arjuna. So Krishna says, for one who understands my transcendental nature. So in the 6th verse, he already declares that this is transcendental. And then he says, one who understands this transcendental nature of my appearance and activities, upon leaving this body, will not return to this material world. So that is the verse that Prabhupada is referring to in this purport. And then Prabhupada also says that systematic hearing of the transcendental qualities and activities of the Lord pushes one towards eternal life. So that is what he is meaning by saying we will get relieved from Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. So here the importance, the stress is laid out by Prabhupada on hearing, and in fact systematic hearing. So how do we hear? So this is an important understanding that all of us should have. So in the Shastras it is described that there are two major methods of acquiring knowledge. One is called Aroha Panta, and the ascending process of knowledge, and the other is called Avaroha Panta, or the descending process of knowledge. So what happens in ascending process of knowledge? So in the Aroha Panta, a person tries to understand the God by his own experimentation, by his own efforts, by his own imagination, by his own speculation. So, but our senses are imperfect, isn't it? So if you analyze any of our senses, say for example you take eyesight, so there is a distance beyond which you will not be able to see. So similarly when you talk of hearing, the ears, so we have something known as audible frequency, so 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. So anything beyond the audible frequency range you will not be able to hear. Similarly if you talk of skin, so if you touch something very hot, very cold, the skin can't take it. So with all these imperfect senses, how can we assimilate or comprehend the perfect knowledge? So that is not possible. So therefore, the Aroha Pantha, the process of acquiring or understanding knowledge by one's own effort, will always be a failure. So then what is the correct method? The Avaroha Pantha, or the descending form of knowledge, in which one hears from an authority in the parampara. That is why Krishna says, Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu. That means this knowledge is being passed down in the disciplic succession. So that is very important. And in the Aroha Pantha, in fact, there is one more great authority, Mahajana, who is telling that we will never be successful. And that is Lord Brahma, quotes in Brahma Samhita, Pantastu kotishata vatsara sampragamyo vayo rathapi manaso munipungavanam sopyasti yat prapadasimnya vichintya tatve govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. So what is Lord Brahma telling in this verse? He is explaining Panthastu koti shatavatsara sampragami. Munipungavana. Munipungava means the greatest, the learned people. And these greatest of the learned people, if they try to go in the pantha, in the path of koti shatavatsara, of traveling for how many years? Millions of years. Koti is crore and shata is 100. So hundreds of crores of years, millions of years. And at what speed they will travel? Vayo ratha api manasaha. So at the speed of air and the speed of mind. So mind, you can imagine what speed it can travel. At one moment you can think of any part of the world, right? So the Lord Brahma is explaining here, even if the greatest of the great learned men travel in their thoughts at the speed of air or mind, for how long? For koti shatavatsara, for millions and millions of years, still the process of understanding Govinda will be avichintya tattve, inconceivable, incomprehensible. So it is difficult to assimilate if we try by our own efforts. So that is never possible. So therefore the Aroha Pantha, so which generally people want to understand by themselves. In fact, this proof of Aroha Pantha and Avaroha Pantha is already existing in our day-to-day lives. If you analyze, if anybody wants to be a PhD or even a simple engineer or a doctor or even a simple any technical education, so can somebody say that I will stay at my home and study the books and I will be a doctor? No. He has to go to a university. He has to go to a college that has been recognized by the government. In fact, these days, it is also seen that students also go to colleges, but colleges themselves were unauthorized, isn't it? We have heard that in the newspapers. So there will not be any, recognition from the government. So you may study in those colleges for all the 4 years. So it is so important. So we are already following this Avaroha Pantha in our day-to-day lives. Or for example, let's take a simple analogy of news. So we read newspaper or we hear of news reports on a television, right? So now we don't go and try to verify that when somebody says that so-and-so has attacked so-and-so. So are we going there and verifying and then only we believe? No, we are already accepting that TV channel or newspaper as authority. So we are believing and we are acting on that platform. So similarly in schools and colleges also, we believe what is being taught to us and we are acting on that knowledge. So, but unfortunately, when it comes to spirituality, we say, no, I don't want to go anywhere and learn from anybody. For me, God will give knowledge from within. I am trying to understand from myself. That's how people, sometimes they know I am in search of absolute truth. I am finding out, I am going to different places, different organizations, meeting different people, traveling to different places and trying to understand. So, this itself is a fallacy. So what we are believing in our day-to-day lives, when it comes to spirituality, we give our assurance to our own senses, which in itself are imperfect. So that's the fallacy of the Aroha Pantha. So and that is how, because of this kind of a understanding of Aroha Pantha, trying to understand by one's own speculation, people sometimes also question in a challenging mood. So they ask, can we see God? Or sometimes people also ask, when we ask them to follow, have you seen God? If you have been practicing this God consciousness, chanting, have you seen God? So in fact, Prabhupada very interestingly answers this question that when somebody challenges like this, have we seen God? So Prabhupada says, first of all, deserve before you desire. And this is true even in this mainstream world. Say for example, let's take the head of the state, a chief minister, or the head of the country, the prime minister. So can any layman just say that I want to go and meet him? And if he is not allowed, can he deny the existence of a chief minister or a prime minister? People will say, you're foolish. Just because you can't meet him doesn't mean that his existence is a question mark. So similarly, just because we can't see God, how can we defy the existence of God? Isn't it? So when we follow certain principles in our day-to-day lives, but when it comes to spirituality, we completely flip around. So we apply different formulae, different parameters there. So similarly, Prabhupada is telling that just because we don't have the qualification to see God, so how can we defy or question the existence of God? That is not correct. And why we are not having the qualification? Because our senses are imperfect. And Prabhupada gives another argument also. Just like in our house, when we have one servant, so we call the servant, that servant comes to us running and says, "Yes, my lord, what is your order? What can I do?" So now just because we wanted to see God, God cannot be present before us. He is not our order carrier. He is not our servant. So when we want to see God, we have to follow a certain process defined by God. Then we will become qualified to see Him. So just like even if you want to see the Chief Minister, if you follow a certain process, if you go through the right channels, you will be able to meet. So like that, Prabhupada in many of his teachings, he says that you will be able to see God provided we follow the sadhana process. And therefore, for that, we have to hear attentively from a bona fide spiritual master, and that is the correct process of receiving knowledge, which is also called as Avaroha Panta or Shrauta Panta. Shrauta Panta means the process of receiving knowledge by Shruti, by hearing from authorized sources. And by following that, then we will be able to see God face to face within this life itself. But today's world, we are very lazy in hearing. So we want to just know by our own thing what is easily available. So in other words, we have become lazy as far as the spiritual life is concerned. So generally when we say lazy, people sometimes retaliate. They say, no, Swamiji, I am working 15, 16 hours a day. So now what we mean by lazy is we are lazy to solving the real problems of life, which is Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. So in that way, in fact, there is one nice story illustrated by Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur. He once said that how there were two lazy people. So he calls this story as a BBMA story. So he says that there were two lazy people and they were very lazy and they were sleeping in one hut. So grass hut, and it was a chilling cold day. It was during the winter season, and for some reason all of a sudden there was accidentally some fire on that hut. So and when there was fire, naturally the temperature keeps increasing gradually. So these two people were fully fast asleep, and both of them started feeling the warmth. Initially it will be warm, right? It was a chilling cold winter night and all of a sudden so there is a fire. So but both of them were so lazy that they didn't want to see around or open their eyes or whatever. So one of them, they were so lazy that even talking was happening in code words. They felt our energy should be conserved for sense enjoyment. So one of them said, BB. So what did he intend to say by saying BB? He wanted to say, my back is burning. So he was sleeping on the back. So because of the heat due to the fire on the hut, he wanted to say, back is burning. But he uttered that in two letters, BB. So the other one was even more lazy. So he didn't want to also reply in full words. He said MA. So he said, move aside. So move aside means turn around. If your back is, he said BB, back is burning. So the second person said, move aside. So that your burning on the back will be reduced. So when the first person said BB, the second person said MA. So then he turned that side and they slept. Again they were so lazy that after some time, when the intensity of fire increased, so the other one of them said, but I'm feeling more heat now. So the other guy said, never mind, I don't have the energy to open my eyes and see what is happening and all that. So let's sleep comfortably. Let's enjoy the sleep. So finally, both of them were burned to ashes because of that devastating fire. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says this story to explain that how, if we are lazy in our spiritual life, lazy to question and challenge the difficulties, why this is happening to me. So why should I grow old? Why should I face disease? Why should I face the death? Death is so painful that you are being severed from all your near and dear ones. So now today, this startup culture is very prominent in the world, especially with so many opportunities provided with the government. There are so many platforms and which are promoting the young entrepreneurs. So the government of India is also promoting that Startup India, Digital India. So they are trying to face solutions for every problem. In fact, there is also one more platform which has come up by the government. So it's called as the Shark Tank. So where they are giving a platform, an opportunity for the budding entrepreneurs. So there, every entrepreneur is identifying a problem and coming up with a business proposition that how we can bridge that gap, how we can make life comfortable for people living in this world. So the same thing, the same startup culture should always be there in us as devotees, as sadhakas, that we should be constantly able to see that what is the gap between my desire of eternality and the transient nature of this world. So we should question to ourselves, can I not go to a place where my relationship with other people will be eternal? That means if you become a friend to someone, then there is no more ending. You will be a friend to somebody for always, forever. Isn't that nice? So, but here sometimes, just like the fox disregards the grapes as sour just because it couldn't reach, many times we don't even think further. No, we accept, this is a reality. Everybody is getting birth and dying, so this is normal. So no, as devotees, we should constantly strive hard to remember how this world is a place of suffering. We should never forget that, now that I have gotten this Krishna's consciousness by the mercy of the Guru and Krishna, so now this is solved. No, our aim is still pending. We have to go back to Godhead. That's the perfection of life. So in fact, as long as we are remaining in this material world, it's a testimonial, it's a testament, it's a proof that we have not perfected our Krishna consciousness. Sometimes after practicing some years and all that, we feel, no, now I have reached one level, I am on the verge of perfecting my Krishna consciousness. No, nothing is clear until the last breath in this life. It is not clear. We only have to execute our day-to-day spiritual duties and depend on the mercy of the spiritual master and Krishna for perfecting our life. So that goal, we should never deviate from that target anytime. So we always should contemplate how this material world is a place of suffering. So there are some quotes that Srila Prabhupada, or some phrases that Prabhupada says, that how this material world is only a place of suffering, and anything that we try to solve these sufferings on a material platform without taking to Krishna consciousness, it will only worsen our situation further. And Prabhupada uses one interesting phrase to explain, saying that jumping from frying pan to the fire. He uses this phrase that in the material world, if somebody is trying to solve their material problems by material solution, he is only jumping from a frying pan From where? From frying pan, he's jumping to where? Fire. What does it mean? His situation will only get worse. It will not improve. So in other words, if you take the example of the smoking. So if you ask people who are smoking, why do you smoke? They say, I want to remain cool. Isn't it? So just cool, buddy, they say. So in fact, Prabhupada in one conversation, he says, he's a rascal, nonsense, that he's breathing in fire and he's telling, I want to remain cool. So you mean even material sense, you don't have to read the Shastras, you don't have to be well versed. It's a common sense. So you're drinking fire, and even more worse is the person who is manufacturing the cigarette. He is telling smoking is injurious to health. That guy who is manufacturing, he is writing it, and we are so blind to reality. So in other words, you don't have to read Bhagavad Gita to understand that smoking kills you. Isn't it? So we are so blind to reality, we are so blind to the facts in the world. So when we want to be cool and drink cigarette, you're only jumping from frying pan to fire. So what does Prabhupada say on this? He has, in fact, if you search folio, he has used this phrase at least about 15 times in different contexts. So I have just collected one or two contexts. So Prabhupada says, so unless you come to the point of surrendering to Krishna, there cannot be any peace. That is the point. Simply by changing from frying pan to the fire will not save you. Therefore, Krishna's last instruction is Sarva Dharman Parityajya. So Prabhupada is telling that how anything other than surrendering to Krishna is only but jumping from frying pan to fire. And in another context, Prabhupada says, what is your freedom? Where are you free? You are completely under the laws of nature. Where is your freedom? So they were thinking of great freedom to get out of the clutches of laws of nature. What is this freedom? From frying pan to fire. Now we have freedom. It means we are jumping from frying pan to fire. So Prabhupada so many times categorically says. So this phrase has been used by Prabhupada to explain that anything other than surrendering to Krishna, we are only worsening our material problem. So, and another phrase that Srila Prabhupada uses to explain that how we cannot solve these problems by tackling in a material platform, he uses this phrase, shifting burden from head to shoulder. He used first this phrase in Back to Godhead magazine in 1974. So where he says, if you are trying to tackle the material life by material solution, it is nothing but shifting the burden from your head to shoulder. So what does this mean? Say suppose you are carrying a very heavy object on your head. Okay? And after some time, your head is aching. It is started paining. So then, what will you say? You are shifting that burden from head to your right shoulder. And now you can feel, oh my God, my burden on my head is relieved. I am feeling great relief. So have you solved the problem in reality? No. Why? After some time, your right shoulder starts aching. Then what do? We shift it to the left shoulder. And then we can be relieved that my right shoulder has been relieved. But very soon what will happen? Your left shoulder starts aching. So when we try to tackle material problems at the material level, we are only shifting the burden from head to shoulder. So in other words, one classic example, I was reading some history book, and there was one interesting proposition. Those were the times where the transportation mainly was based on the bullock carts and the horse carriages, right? So the horse-driven carts were one of the fastest means of commutation those days. I'm talking of several decades earlier. So at that time, it was told, the historians have recorded in the books of history, that the horse carriages were posing lot of problems to the commuters. For example, this horse was laying out the dung on the streets. So that was emanating very strong odor, some fumes that was causing some kind of a nausea in in people who breathe that. So, and it was causing some irritation, vomiting and all that. So they were seeing that how to solve this horse carriage problem. And secondly, they also found out that this wheel, and those days it was all mostly cobblestone paths, right? So these iron rimmed wheels, when they were rolling against these cobblestone paths, there was a huge sound that was being created, and it was causing a lot of sound pollution. So, and then many people were pushed to the verge of losing their, weakening their hearing power. So like this, the article goes on and on. So basically they were all trying to list out all the problems that existed because of the horse-driven carts being used as the main form of commutation. And when there was a discovery and thoughts of a proposal of inventing a motor vehicle that used rubber tires, and these rubber tires would traverse or move on a tar roads, which will not produce that sound anymore. You will not have this nasal irritation. You will not have all these problems, and your commutation will be faster. So there were some articles published during this verge of transition from the horse-driven carts to automobile, motor vehicles. So this article was focusing on how all the problems of those horse-driven cars are negated, and all positives of automobile-driven, everything is so nice. But today, after several decades of automobile invention, have we solved the problem? At least those days, people were having nasal irritation, some vomiting, and after that they used to live. But today, because of the motor vehicles, how many people are dying on road accidents? Do we have any idea? So what has happened is we have shifted our burden from head to shoulder. We have jumped from frying pan to fire. So in other words, therefore, we all should understand that anything that we are trying to solve at the material level, we will not be able to be successful. In fact, Albert Einstein says that we will never be able to solve a problem by remaining at the same level by which we created that problem. In other words, we have certain understanding, certain intelligence, certain consciousness. So because of our all these attributes, we have created a problem. So now for us to solve that problem, we have to move up. We have to transcend our consciousness. By remaining at the same level of consciousness which we were in at the time of creating the problem, we will not be able to solve the problem. So this is the classic example. By invention of automobiles, all those one set of problems were solved, another serious set of problems were unlocked. So we will never be able to solve these problems. So this is how Prabhupada explains the second phrase. And the third thing, Prabhupada also gives an understanding of how to perceive the sufferings around us in this material world. He says, happiness in this material world is only an interval between two stints of distress. And he also gives a further example to say that if a person is submerged under water, if he is held by head. In the earlier days, the kings used to punish the culprits like that. So the victim, the person, the criminal, when he is put under water by force, he will be gasping for breath. He will be wanting to breathe. So after some time, when he is almost on the verge of death, the soldiers will remove him out and will allow him to breathe. When he was almost getting relieved, oh my God, I just got saved from the clutches of death, then he'll be again put into water. So can anybody say that the interval which he was feeling that sense of sigh of relief between two immersions in water. Is that called happiness? He just escaped one danger and he is going to enter another danger. So, the interval between two dangers is never called happiness. The same thing is happening to us in our lives. One problem will come and we try to solve that problem, and very soon another problem will unfold, and we are considering the time between these two problems. When the first problem got solved and the second problem is yet to be unlocked, we say, now I am happy in my life. So these are the three phrases or examples that we should always remember in our life to understand that how this material world is a temporary place of miseries. The first phrase what we discussed was jumping from frying pan to fire. Second is shifting our burden from head to shoulders. And third is nothing but the happiness is not, the true happiness is only experienced in experience of Krishna, in touch with Krishna consciousness, whereas what is experienced in the interval of two distresses is not happiness, it's only an illusion. So all these, and in fact, Prahalad Maharaj also gives his understanding on this subject of how to perceive this distress. In the 7th canto, he says, Yasmat priya priya viyoga samyoga janma shokagnina sakala yonishu dahyamanaha dukkaushadam tadapi dukkadatatdiyaham bhuman brahmami vadame tava dasya yogam. So Prahalad Maharaj is praying to Lord Narsimha that dukkaushadam tadapi dukkad atadiyaham. That means in this material world, if you are trying to find solution to a problem, the solution is more painful than the problem. See, that is what Prabhupada is also explaining, jumping from frying pan to fire. See how all these great Acharyas, the Shastras, are completely congruent in this understanding. So, Prahlad Maharaj is telling, if we are trying to find a medicine for a disease, that medicine is more painful than experiencing the symptoms of the disease. One practical example, if you have, if in case come across any patient or relatives or friends or his friends or whatever, in your knowledge, if you have come across a patient who is fighting cancer, so they undergo a process, treatment called as chemotherapy. So if you get an opportunity, please go and talk to them. They will tell you, many people, I know some people whom I have interacted in person also, they have made a conscious decision that I will survive, I will live as long as my body allows, but I will not take up this chemotherapy treatment. You know why? Because it is so very painful. So that is what Prahlad Maharaj is talking about. The solution, the treatment, the medicine for your problem, for your disease is more painful than the disease itself. Dukkaushad, dukkaushadam tadapi dukkad atadiyaham. So more than the dukkaushada is more painful. So therefore, we have to understand that it is not possible to solve these material problems of Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi by tackling it ourselves, by the Aroha Panta. We have to receive this knowledge in the Parampara, in the Avaroha Panta, Shrauta Panta, and that is where it is so important to read the books of Srila Prabhupada. So in fact, the first line Prabhupada says, the systematic hearing of the transcendental activities and qualities and names of Lord Krishna pushes one towards spiritual life, eternal life. So recently we concluded the book marathon. So most of us, were very enthusiastic and we all distributed so many books for the pleasure of Prabhupada. But we should also make sure that we also read his books. Prabhupada says, I have not written my books just for distribution, but it is mainly for my disciples to read. So we should not feel that, okay, one day I have read and after 2-3 days again I'll read. No, every day we should hear. It is like charging. So our mobiles, our electronic gadgets get discharged after certain usage. So for us to get charged again, we have to read, we have to hear from Srila Prabhupada. So when we read and hear from Srila Prabhupada, we will be following this Avaroha Pantha, the descending form of knowledge, and by that he will be able to give us this greatest gift of transcendental knowledge. So, and Prabhupada, once if somebody comes to Srila Prabhupada, he will never lose his spiritual life. In fact, you all might have seen, if you have read any letters of Srila Prabhupada, he signs at the end of this letter that your ever well-wisher. So once in one conversation, Srila Prabhupada himself explains why he signs at the end of each letter as your ever well-wisher. So let's hear from Prabhupada. He says, I write at the end of my letters to my disciples, your ever well-wisher. And as such, I cannot become otherwise than being ever well-wisher of my disciples, even though he may leave me. So Prabhupada is telling that even though somebody leaves, I will still be his ever well-wisher. Not just only when we are following. Even if we don't follow, if we don't, so he is our ever well-wisher. So this was basically discussed by Prabhupada in the context of one senior devotee, Kirtanananda. So he was serving Prabhupada with lot of enthusiasm, and there was a point that he was getting separated and getting distanced himself. So at that point Prabhupada is telling, so I was praying to Krishna that he may save Kirtanananda. Krishna may save Kirtanananda from his misunderstanding. And if ever Kirtanananda chanted Hare Krishna at least once in sincere heart, I am sure Krishna will not allow him to go out of his influence. See, Prabhupada is telling if even once we would chant, then he will pray to Krishna that Krishna will not give up on us. Therefore, I believe that Kirtanananda can never forget the form of Krishna, neither he can deny his personality. I always think of him and pray to Krishna for his good sense. That is my duty. Anyone who comes to me for my help or wants to advance in Krishna consciousness and whom I initiate and accept as my disciple, I must pray for him and his welfare always. So Kirtanananda personally served me, especially during my illness, which I always remember. So this is why Prabhupada signs every letter as your ever well-wisher. So in this way, we can be rest assured that we have come to a bona fide spiritual master who is always wishing our wellness in spiritual life and who will not give up on us even if we are ready to forsake his shelter. So in that way, we are so fortunate, and therefore we should take this advantage of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And for us to chant progressively, that is from the Namabhasa stage to the Nama Aparada stage to the Shuddha Nama stage. For us to traverse this journey successfully, what is one most crucial, important element is hearing from Srila Prabhupada. So if our chanting is not backed by the transcendental knowledge, it will turn out to be mechanical very soon. Very soon you will start feeling it as a burden, or when you are chanting, you will be trying to do problem solving in the mind. So we will be thinking of what happened yesterday, we will be thinking of what is going to happen tomorrow. So we will never be able to hear the Mahamantra. So for hearing the Mahamantra attentively, so it is so important for us to read, be in touch with the words of the Guru. Only by this systematic hearing and reading of Prabhupada's books, we can conquer this Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Granthraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.